Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week, we read Luke chapter 19, verses 29 through 44, a Palm Sunday text that, in Luke's version, is entirely without palms. Luke paints a picture of the cosmic world, the animal world, the human world, even the stones shifting into alignment to point to one thing, to hold this wildly powerful moment of this paradigmatically holy man coming into the paradigmatically holy city. As Jesus holds up the fate of the city, we notice that it's not actually so different from the impending fate of his own body. How can that be? What does that mean? And why are there no palms in Luke's story anyway? Thanks for being with us. Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Hey, Amy, I am doing pretty good. Amy, this week we're doing the Palm Sunday text, and you know the two sort of most well-known rituals surrounding Palm Sunday are the waving of palms and the shouting of Hosanna. And our text today has neither one of those things. It is a very curious Palm Sunday when there's no palms and no hosannas.
Yes, but there is a reference in this text to a part of Psalm 118 that is right after the verse that has the, Hosanna. Yeah. So if people know the Hebrew Bible roots really well, they will totally pick up on that, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, clearly this is attached."
It's kind of interesting to think about how you would have a Palm Sunday service that didn't involve palms and also hosannas, and whether you would do that if you were trying to have such a service. Because what they do in this text is they take off their clothes and lay them down on the road, and probably that's an awkward thing to do in a service. They're not naked, though. They're just taking off their cloaks.
They're not naked, but I'm trying to think for real, if people took off their coats, right?
Everybody wear a coat, and we're going to take them off and walk over them.
Well, but then I feel like the question is to be who gets to walk on the coats. That would be like a really big job.
That is true, and it's sort of putting yourself in the place of Jesus, which is like a little...
It's like frowned upon.
Yeah.
I think Terry, our liturgist, will sort all this out for us.
Yes.
Thank you in advance, Terry, for your masterful treatment of this text.
Indeed. The nice thing about a podcast is we can keep our clothes on.
I thought you were going to say the nice thing about a podcast is I can delete this entire conversation and no one will ever know what happened.
That is exactly what's about to happen.
Was it? Oh, man. Bobby, we are reading for Palm Sunday, Luke chapter 19, verses 29 to 44, where, as you have mentioned, there are neither palms nor hosannas, but people do take off coats, and there is a cult.
There is.
That's good. Good.
It has lots of the features.
It has elements. It gestures toward the traditions. We stopped not so far from this last time, but there is a little bit of text that we've skipped. What do you think we might either want to hear about or just remember for ourselves before we start this section of text?
I feel like I've said it recently that we skipped some parable, and I was like, thank goodness we skipped that parable because I don't know what to do with that one. And here we skipped another parable that I also don't know what to do with. And so kudos to the narrative lectionary.
It's really working for you, yeah.
The narrative lectionary is doing me right. Skipping all the passages that I don't really know what to do with. This one is about a king who leaves town and he entrusts his money with his servants and one of them invests it and makes back tenfold. And he's like, yeah, way to go. One of them invests it and makes back, I don't know, fivefold or something. And he's like, yeah, nice job. And then the last one buries it and then gives him back the same thing. Like he didn't lose any money. He just didn't make any money. And so the king is like, I'm taking away your money and I'm giving it to the guy that made me 10 times as much. And that's the parable. And so to everyone who has will be given more. And from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. So I've never been entirely clear what to do with that parable. It seems to be something about not just playing it safe, but taking some risks on behalf of the gospel or something like that. But anyway, so that sort of sets us up for this arrival in Jerusalem. It's the last parable that Jesus tells, just between that Zacchaeus story that we read last time and the entry into Jerusalem.
Mm.
I feel like I talked a very long time about something that I was like, I don't know how to talk about this. So
no, now I'm so
anyway.
curious about that. But as you said, that is not our text.
It's not our text for today.
It's not in our reading, but okay, I will ponder that matter in my heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing to say, Amy, is that we are now reaching the conclusion of a journey that began all the way back in chapter 9. I think it's verse 51. We commented on that verse. It says Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. And so for the last 10 chapters, we've been headed to Jerusalem. And now we are arriving. He's encountered Zacchaeus in Jericho, and then now he is right on the outskirts of town, headed into the middle of it all.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's see what happens as Jesus really comes up to the edges of Jerusalem here. I am reading from the NRSV and picking up in verse 29. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of the disciples, saying, Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, Why are you untying it? Just say this, the Lord needs it. So those who were sent departed and found it as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, Why are you untying the colt? They said, The Lord needs it. Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. Okay, I'm going to pause us here for a moment. Bob, you already just said like they really are coming into the city or the immediate area around the city. Is there anything else that we should talk about in terms of where they are? There was a city called Bethpage that on Long Island that my high school played sometimes in sports.
Oh yeah, I think that's the same one. Jesus is in Long Island. He's playing a little sports ball. And
great. There's probably a Greek restaurant called the Mount of Olives there.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be amazing. So you told us they're getting really close, but the mention of the Mount of Olives seems particular here. What should we know about where we are?
So the Mount of Olives is on the east side of Jerusalem, and it's sort of the mountain sort of across the little valley that looks down over the city. And we know the Mount of Olives, particularly, I think maybe this reference is to the prophet Zechariah in chapter 14, as he is envisioning what is at least come to be understood as the sort of arrival of the Messiah. In Zechariah 14:4, on that day he will stand upon the Mount of Olives to the east of Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives will be split in half. And so I think if you have ears to hear that this is Luke setting us up for here is Jesus. He is in some way enacting the arrival of the Messiah as told in the prophet Zechariah.
Yeah.
Bethphage and Bethany seem to be 2 towns sort of near the Mount of Olives. We don't know Bethphage from anywhere else in the New Testament. Bethany is a place that Jesus has some interactions, especially in John's gospel, with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. I don't know that the identity of those 2 cities matters in particular, just their proximity to the Mount of Olives, which has these sort of messianic connotations. What might you say about that?
Exactly what you said. No, I mean, Pretty much all those things, but that there is both the sort of he's getting really close and also these particular places start to have a weightiness associated with the Messiah. Bobby, I love this instruction that he gives the disciples, just sort of go ahead into the city and you'll find a colt.
Yes.
Which feels so different to me than go into the city and find a colt.
Yes.
And bring it back to me.
Yes.
How do you understand that difference? Like, so here are two possibilities, but maybe it's even another one for you. Maybe Jesus has local supporters there and like they have made preparation for him.
Right.
Maybe the cosmos is prepared for this moment and there are things that are meant to be and laid out as they need to be. Maybe Jesus has some kind of seeing power about where colts are. Is a colt a horse?
Yeah, so the word that's used here can be used for a young animal that is either a donkey or a horse, like a rideable animal of that kind.
Okay.
And so traditionally has been understood as a young donkey. And so that's what it is in my head. I don't know if you care what it is in my head, but it's
that's
like a cute little donkey.
Helpful. Donkey's more fun to say than horse.
Yeah.
So how do you understand the fact that he knows that this young donkey is waiting for him?
It's such an interesting moment in the text. And like Luke spends a fair amount of time talking about the acquisition of the donkey.
Really a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Like almost half this text is about how did he get the donkey that he's going to ride on. And so he cares about it. You know, in our next text that we read for Maundy Thursday, there's another sort of Jesus saying, go into the city and you'll find a guy with a water jug. And it all feels a little like Cloak and Dagger, like spy show, you know, like he's worked out all these secret signals. And so it's tempting to me to read this text that way. But the reason that I don't is because the owners of the donkey don't seem to know what is happening. They're like, what are you doing? And if they knew, like if they had prearranged with Jesus, then maybe they'd be like, are you Jesus's guys? Or, you know, whatever. But so I think this is Jesus sort of seeing in the future. And it's like a prophetic announcement that he makes that then is fulfilled the way he said it would be. And so then you as a reader and the disciples as characters in this text have this sort of sense of like the things Jesus says, like he really does know what's about to happen. And it happens the way he says. And so if we can trust that in small things, then maybe we can also trust that in big things. I don't know that I would insist that it must be read that way, though. It's just kind of the way it has settled with me.
Yeah.
How do you read it?
I definitely like that for the same reason you said that, like the people who are like, what are you doing? That seems a little bit to work against the idea that this is about knowing that he had supporters in Jerusalem.
Right.
I am interested about the sort of space between the idea that this is about Jesus foreseeing something, it's sort of a prophecy, versus the cosmos coming into alignment for this moment. And probably there's a way to sort of close the space between those ideas. But I feel in a lot of this text sort of drawn to the idea that like things in the big picture are sort of like lining up in a certain way for this epic thing that is about to happen.
So Jesus knows there will be a cult there because there must be a cult there. And the cosmos are aligning such that there will be a cult there.
Yeah.
Even though maybe he's not had like a vision of it, but he just knows like this is the way it must be. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there is a reason that the cult is there. It's not just that like Jesus could like close his eyes and say, okay, how am I going to get a cult?
I like that. The cosmos is aligning for this event and it's going to play out the way it must play out.
Bobby, why does he want a cult all of a sudden?
I mean, he's been walking a long way, Amy.
No, I mean, really, I think that was one of the things I was
really?
like, maybe he's tired.
He's tired.
His body is about to face enormous abuse. Maybe he's trying to save some strength or maybe other things.
I think that's not an unreasonable way to read it. I was kind of joking because he's come all the way from Galilee and now he's made it to the Mount of Olives. And so it's just like the last little mile or two. He's like, oh man, I need a donkey. I think what's happening here is this is being connected to another prophecy from the prophet Zechariah, which is in Zechariah chapter 9, which envisions the king. It says, look, your king will come to you. He is righteous and victorious. He is humble and riding on an ass, on a colt, the offspring of a donkey. Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming that in this sort of way that Jesus is he's enacting these prophecies, or I don't quite know how to think of it. I think he's doing it intentionally, not just he's accidentally doing it and then we're like, oh my gosh, he's doing what's in Zechariah. But I think either he knows, or at least Luke is telling us the story as an effort to connect what he's doing to the prophecies in Zechariah. So he comes from the Mount of Olives, he comes on a colt. And so it's sort of like prophetic street theater or something like that. And so if you're gonna do that, then you need a donkey. And so but he hasn't got one because he's been journeying from Galilee all this way. And so he's gonna ride in on a borrowed donkey, stolen donkey. This one is less. In the other gospels, like in Mark's gospel, the owners aren't there when Jesus takes the donkey. And so some strangers are like, what are you doing? And the disciples are like, its owner needs it, or its Lord needs it. Here he actually gets some sort of permission from the owners themselves.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I like the idea of prophetic street theater. I think maybe I'm just being really cosmically minded today. I don't know.
I like it. Yeah.
No, but I feel like the idea that Jesus knows that Zechariah said that the king is going to ride in on a donkey. So now Jesus is like, well, I better get a donkey. I don't know. That kind of deflates the story to me. That's cheating. It's not fulfilling a prophecy if you knew the prophecy and now you're doing it intentionally because that's what the prophecy said.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I like the idea of prophetic street theater, of sort of this is a way to sort of let the reader understand, the people who know these texts, who are waiting for these things. It is a way to communicate to them without something so crass as language.
I like this sort of difference in the way that we're reading it. Mine is fairly, it's not mundane exactly, but it's unfolding on a very human level. And you're reading it as unfolding on a cosmic level. And I really kind of like that difference of reading. And maybe we should.
And I like the intersection between them, because there's a lot of them that you could actually, you could totally make sense of it both ways at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I guess is what you would want from a story like this. Why do you think it's important that this animal has never been ridden?
To me, the way to make sense of that is that, this is an unridden colt. It's not used to having somebody riding it. And so not just anybody could probably hop on this animal and have it process them into Jerusalem with a crowd and not buck them off. And so the way that I have tended to read it is Jesus is this donkey's master in the larger sense, the cosmic sense that you're talking about. All things belong to Jesus. He has this sort of way of, mastery over is not exactly what I mean. It's communion with, or the animal recognizes Jesus' authority, or Jesus's and just his, how animals can recognize your character and they treat you one way or another, even if they've never met you before. And I like to think this animal just encounters Jesus, and Jesus is of such a persuasion that the donkey's yeah, you can ride me. That's cool. And so it's sort of giving us some suggestion about Jesus's authority, or his status, or his relationship to the natural world, or something like that.
And I think that's lovely, especially coming into this section about the cloaks.
Yeah.
Because cloaks, any kind of clothing to me is such a human marker. It's conveys so much about, there are practical aspects of it, to be sure. And clothing also is a marker of identity, and it affords dignity to humans. And, we're the only animals that find clothing for ourselves. Even though we dress up our dogs, they don't find their own clothing.
Yes.
So how interesting then to have a cult who's never been ridden that really sort of represents the world that is not human civilization or overly impacted by human civilization, and then to lay a cloak over the animal and to lay out cloaks under the animal's feet.
Yeah.
What do you think about all these cloaks, Bobby?
I really like that emphasis on giving something of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got the people along the road have a little skin in the game, so to speak, and they are taking off something that they need. You don't have like extra cloaks.
No, and they don't have washing machines. Like they're
exactly
like, this is a big deal.
And so this animal's going to walk over them and rub them into the dirt. And so I like that idea of the people are invested in their own, like giving something of themselves for this dramatic entry. The laying of cloaks on the road, we see that actually in the Hebrew scripture with King Jehu in 2 Kings 9.
Mm-hmm.
They place their cloaks on the road and he rides in on them, and they pronounce Jehu as king. And so there's something here about the king. This is making the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem kingly in its own way, and the people recognizing this kingly entrance. So I like that combination of things, like the humility of people like putting their own clothes on the ground, and then the like lifting up of Jesus in this sort of kingly procession. It has those roots in the Hebrew scripture, but you would imagine, if Pilate were riding into town, that he would be riding in with, an actual red carpet rolled out or things like that.
Right.
And so it's sort of, even though it's in the traditional way of Hebrew kings, it's still a contrast with the like pomp and circumstance of the Roman imperial way. And so Jesus is king, but he's not king in the same way as the Roman procurator might be representing kingness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I really like that contrast too. That this is like each individual person giving the thing that they have.
Right.
It's not the state giving it, or
right.
Some kind of polished thing that is only used for that purpose, or it's a real community investment in this.
And it's the people that are making this declaration about him, yes, and not the empire. Yeah, exactly.
I have these two other images in my head that are coming up around the cloaks, and I don't know if they're going to go anywhere, but I just want to sort of throw them out there, and then we may decide, like, okay, that's interesting, file it away. They're not as explicitly connected as something like 2 Kings 9, but one of them it's not even really with cloaks or clothing, but is the image of Moses taking off his sandals because he is on holy ground. And I just keep thinking about like Jesus, who is, this paradigmatically holy person who is coming into this, what has been a paradigmatically holy land, city, and then separating his feet further from the land, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I have that in my mind. And then I have this image of like wrapping the holy items in the Mishkan with layers of fabric in order to travel with them. I think I just am so in this like cosmic mindset of like, this is Jesus coming into Jerusalem. Like this is like an explosively powerful thing.
I really like that. I'm having to I'm wrestling with the image and all the good ways. And so when you think about wrapping holy things or holy ground, are you thinking in that sense that Jesus is the holy thing that is being enwrapped, or that Jerusalem is the holy thing that is being enwrapped, or that both of those things?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the right question. I think I haven't quite sorted it in my mind. I mean, I guess in this story, it would be both things.
So Jesus the donkey has been covered in cloaks, which sort of protects his holiness or something. And then
Oh, that's interesting.
Jerusalem, like the ground has been cloaked also. So the ground is, so they're both protected from the, protected from the donkey sounds weird, but like.
Yeah, right. But that there's some sort of buffer.
There's a barrier between both.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know quite what to do with those images, but they came into my head, so I thought I would plant them in your head.
Thank you.
There's one last thing in this section that I think is worth drawing out, and it is actually back just a little bit in verse 31 when Jesus is instructing these people to go get the colt. He says, "You can tell people the Lord needs it." In my translation, Lord is capitalized. But my understanding of the Greek is that the word can mean, I mean, it's sort of like the word Lord in English if we were like sort of like old-timey British English, like lords and ladies. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, Adonai, the Father in heaven kind of Lord. It could also mean a powerful person kind of Lord. So that ambiguity seems to, you know, play nicely into, I don't know, the ways in which Jesus is and is not explicitly claiming a particular identity here.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The word that's being used there is kurios, and it's being used in all of those ways simultaneously, which is so fascinating. So when it talks about, you know, Jesus says, tell it its Lord needs it. But also when it says the owners said to them, that's also the word Lord. And so like it is very explicitly used there to refer to the one who owns the donkey.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the disciples say to the owners of the donkey, it's kurios needs it, they're saying its owner needs it, or its Lord needs it, or the Lord needs it. It rings differently when they're saying it to the owner.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I don't quite know where we want to go with that, but I think there is something in there just about like Jesus as the true owner of the things, like everything that came into being through him, or however John says it. And so in that sense, the donkey does belong to him, even though its owners are standing right there saying, wait, that's our donkey. And they seem to recognize the legitimate ownership in some way. And maybe we're also calling Jesus God here, Lord, in that sort of Exodus 3 sense.
Yeah.
So that little word right there is doing a lot of work.
That is doing a lot of work because they recognize that ownership, but they don't know that he's referring to Jesus.
Right.
They just know that there could be another owner, Lord, however we want to translate that needs it. And so they say, okay.
Yeah, we don't get their reaction really. The owners say, "Why are you untying it?" And they say that its Lord needs it, and they're like, "Okay." I mean, I don't know what they
say. Maybe they chased him with a pitchford.
They might have. You know? They might have. Yeah.
All Luke seems to be interested in relaying here is that exactly what Jesus said would happened, and anything else that may have happened is not reported.
Yes.
So.
And it does seem from Luke's perspective anyway that Jesus is the legitimate master, Lord, owner of that donkey.
Yes.
Whatever the human characters in the story might have thought, Luke is saying that's Jesus's donkey. Yeah. He can take it, which is kind of interesting, I guess, because the implication there or the extension there is that like everything, and you and I talk about this in very different contexts, but like the things that we own really belong to God and we share them or we steward them. And this is an example of that.
Yeah.
Amy, the other thing that's going on in this text it's something that's missing in this text, which I don't know quite how to think about that if what we're doing is reading Luke and what we're saying is Luke doesn't talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other versions of the Palm Sunday text, the people are not just laying their cloaks on the ground, they are also waving palms. And each of the Gospels tells it differently as to whether what they are and whether they're waving them or laying them on the ground or both. But Luke just omits them altogether, which is, it's interesting as somebody who celebrates Palm Sunday and this version doesn't have the palms. The closest thing I can get to about that is that the waving of palms in the book of Maccabees was a sign of loyalty to the Maccabean kings. It's like a nationalist sign of, pro-Israel over and against the Greek Empire. And so there would be a particular political edge, or there could be, to waving palms at Passover in the context of Rome. That would be like a nationalist call back to that earlier time and could be seen as politically threatening.
Yeah.
If you read it that way, then Luke has eliminated that political threat. He's just said, nope, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't really know where to press that. Luke does not seem to me to be a particularly quietist pro-Roman gospel. So why would he eliminate that nationalist image is not entirely clear to me. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, as someone who just prepared the Lucan version, I was not
right,
thinking
exactly.
about what was in the other version.
Yeah, sure.
But it does really put a different, I've been in this big cosmic mindset as we've been reading this, and it really does shift it. Again, not that all those things can't be happening at the same time. They can. They often are, I guess. But it does direct your attention a little bit differently, I guess. If Luke wants to tell us the most important thing that's happening here,
right,
it's something else.
It's interesting. I like that cosmic angle because, it's not that Luke is downplaying the kingship of Jesus. They're going to use that language kind of explicitly here, but they're downplaying the nationalist implications of it. And so that might actually push in that direction you're pushing, that Jesus is a king, but he's not a nationalistic restorer of the kingdom of Israel. He's a more cosmic kind of king who's not related exactly to the nation that is maybe expecting restoration, but he's representing some other kingdom altogether.
Yeah.
And so now we've got kingdom of God, kingdom of Rome. We don't want to get confused about what kingdoms we're talking about. And so let's pull away the Maccabean kind of symbol there, maybe.
Yeah. I like that.
Hi, everyone. It's Bobby here from Bible Worm. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. Amy and I started Bible Worm a couple of years ago because we wanted to create a space where we could talk deeply about the Bible in ways that bring together our academic backgrounds in biblical studies and our deep engagement with communities and people of faith. We decided to make this resource free because we want everyone to have access to sound biblical scholarship that connects biblical faith to everyday life. We hope you're finding the podcast fits that need. That said, while the podcast is free, making it is not. Amy and I and the rest of Team Bible Worm spend a lot of time and energy studying, recording, and editing the podcast to make it freely available to the public. If you enjoyed the podcast, and if you find yourself in a position to support our work, we hope that you will consider becoming a Bible Worm supporter for as little as $4 per month. For a bit more, you can also get early access to episodes, weekly liturgies, video Bible studies, join a monthly discussion group, and more. We realize not everyone is in a position to support the podcast, but if you appreciate our work and want to support us, we hope you'll check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for more details. Thanks so much for listening, and now back to this week's podcast.
Let's see what happens next, shall we?
Let's do.
Okay, I'm picking up in verse 37. As he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out." This is the section, I think, that got me thinking all cosmically in the first place.
Yeah, talk a little bit. You were mentioning Psalm 118 earlier and the cosmic nature of everything. Can you just talk about how you were processing this part?
I mean, I just imagine, I think what caught me first was this image that his disciples began to praise God joyfully and with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen. And for a moment, I was like, they've been seeing these deeds of power for a while now.
Yeah.
Like, why all of a sudden are they shouting about it?
Yeah.
But this moment of entry into Jerusalem is like, it is a uniquely powerful, holy man coming into the seat of holiness and power at that time. And, you know, if you imagine that maybe they were hoping or believing that he was the Messiah, thinking about that Zechariah text that you had mentioned,
Right.
there could not be a bigger there could not be a bigger moment than
Yes.
this moment. Yeah, and that really is that image at the end that the stones would shout.
Mm-hmm.
Like, apparently there's my study Bible has a footnote that it's maybe a reference to Habakkuk chapter 2, which have you seen that text? It's Habakkuk 2:11, which is a really, I think, sort of strange text. But there are stones that shout out in there, but it seems to be more that in that text, the stones were a witness to something bad that happened and are not going to keep quiet about it. But I think just the idea that what is happening has been witnessed.
Yes.
And like, if the people declare the witness, beautiful. And if the people don't, the cosmos will in some other way declare what is true. Like, it cannot be hidden.
I had not made that Habakkuk connection, but where my head had gone is back to John the Baptist's speech in Luke 3, where he says, I could raise up children of Abraham from these stones. And so there's a sense in which, I don't know, like, God's people are going to be God's people, and you can't shut it down. And I love that, like, the idea of the natural world just responding to Jesus. Like, we saw the colt responding to Jesus earlier. Now we see the stones responding to Jesus.
There's animals, and then there's inanimate objects.
Right.
Like, it's penetrating further and further in the story.
So it's a little bit like people are like a little bit unnecessary to this equation. I mean, like, yay, people, like, this is good. But like, Jesus does not need the people to acclaim him as the king in order to be acclaimed the king.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, that's really powerful.
Yes. What would you want us to know about Psalm 118? I know I mentioned it before.
I was going to ask you about Psalm 118 because I feel like that is such an important text that you talk about from time to time. And so can I defer that question back to you?
Psalm 118 is like my MVP of all Psalms of all time. It just, when in doubt, it's probably from Psalm 118 in my own life. In this case, there is a line 25, that is verse 25, as we say in normal English, that is part of Hallel, which is this particular, like, sort of short liturgy of praise that is offered at various times in the Jewish calendar, including festivals like Passover, but also other times. And in Hebrew, it's Ana Adonai Hoshiana, Ana Adonai Hatzlichana. And so you can hear the Hoshiana, you know, that's sort of how that, I guess, becomes Hosanna, which is, O Lord, deliver us and let us prosper. And that is the verse that is right before Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, may the one who enters in the name of the Lord be blessed. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.
Yes.
Which is, I think, being played upon here, but is being maybe combined with some things from Zechariah, who is also an MVP for this chapter of Luke and probably much of the New Testament.
What comes from Zechariah?
The idea that it's the king that, you know, you mentioned before, that the king who's going to enter on a colt, a donkey into Jerusalem.
Right.
Do you see that those as the two sort of texts that are at play behind this?
Yeah, I had not made as direct a connection to Zechariah, although I see how you're getting there. The Psalm 118 and then the replacement of the one who comes in the name of the Lord with the king, like, that's a big
It's a big
shift.
change, yes.
And it cuts in the opposite direction of what I was saying a minute ago. I mean, about the waving of the palms. Like, it's not that Luke's trying to hide the kinginess of Jesus by hiding the palms, because we're saying it very clearly here. And so maybe this is like a gesture to another kind of king, and which gets you into that Zechariah 9 text. the other thing that's so interesting here is the peace in heaven and glory in the highest heavens. Which maybe, that king who comes in Zechariah 9 is a king of peace. But the direct echo of that peace in heaven is when the angels appear in Luke chapter 2 to the shepherds, and the whole heavenly army declares peace on earth. And I just love that image in Luke 2 of like the heavenly warriors proclaiming peace. And then here comes Jesus now into Jerusalem, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heavens. Like this is a king of peacefulness. And maybe this is why the hiding of the palms. The Maccabees were like kings of war because they had to be. Like that's the way you win a victory over Greece. And so a king of peace entering in is a different kind of thing altogether. And so the way they're taking this MVP of the Psalms and they're reworking it in these ways to make it about Jesus, the peaceful king being blessed as he comes into the city. This is a powerful moment for sure.
The Pharisees are not thrilled about this.
They are not thrilled.
No, and they want Jesus to tell them to stop it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth noting here that it's not the entire crowd that seems to be yelling this. Not all the people who are throwing their cloaks on the ground. It is the multitude of disciples. Or do you read that as the crowd?
The CEB has it, the whole throng of his disciples. And so, no, I think you're right. Like, that there is some group of them, the ones who are like on the way with Jesus that are shouting this as Jesus comes into town.
Yeah.
But maybe there's others around, including apparently the Pharisees, who are not shouting these things. And they would like for the shouting to cease.
Mm-hmm.
I have read that as, we've talked before about this is happening at the beginning of Passover week. Passover is a politically charged time in the first century. Mm-hmm. It's celebrating the overthrow of the Egyptian regime and the freedom from slavery and the defeat of Pharaoh. And so it has these like political connotations anyway. So when Jews from all over the world get together in Jerusalem to celebrate the overthrow of the empire of Pharaoh, it makes the empire of Rome like a little nervous. Mm-hmm. And there were often like restive kind of moments at Passover. And so this like Jesus riding into town, the people proclaiming or the disciples proclaiming his kingship, like, this is like going to get you in trouble, right? This is like having a protest on the Capitol lawn when you're shouting about something where the whoever, the governor or the whatever, there is going to be upset. Like you got to be a little cautious about that. The Pharisees are saying their interest is in like, and ironically, maybe preserving the peace. Like, let's not get ourselves in trouble, y'all. Even while the disciples are declaring, like, here's the King of Peace coming in to Jerusalem.
Right. And when you said before, I can't remember the language you used exactly, but maybe it was something like you're going to get yourself in trouble, which is true. But as you have pointed out to us over these past few weeks, in case it wasn't clear enough, that the Pharisees have no special love for Jesus. It's not that they're concerned per se with Jesus's well-being, but Jesus is a Jew. Jesus is one of the people, and the Jewish people are getting all riled up, and we all know that particularly any minority group within a dominant power, they are going to pay for each other's actions. They will all, I think that is the working concern here. It's not that just like, okay, fine, well, those Jews over there are crazy and they're proclaiming this guy king and that's not really my problem. It is their problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's really well said. Yeah, if there is a revolt among the Jewish people, Pilate and the Romans are not going to be very discerning about who did and did not revolt. Right. It's going to be, let's shut this thing down. Mm-hmm. And the Pharisees are going to get caught up in that, and the common folks are going to get caught up in that. Yeah. And so there's a sense of threat. Interestingly, this is actually the second time we've seen the Pharisees seemingly kind of trying to protect Jesus. The one time was back when they were like, hey, you better, I think it was in chapter 13, you better get out of here because Herod's going to try to kill you. we read that one then as like, that's probably not what they were doing. But I mean, here again, the second time, they're like, Jesus, like shut this thing down a little bit. So I don't quite know how to make sense of that dynamic of the Pharisees, but I think your reading is correct that they're worried about the broader implications for the Jewish people writ large in Jerusalem if Jesus is coming in, being declared a king. I kind of get it. Like, you know, when I'm part of a crowd at a protest or something and people start getting riled up a little bit, like, even if it's a peaceful riling, like it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
It makes me a little uncomfortable about what might happen.
Yes, there is a real way in which the people's fates are tied. And so, yeah. Shall we continue? We have Let's continue. Little section.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm picking up in verse 41. As he came near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, "If you, even you, had only recognized on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. Indeed, the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up ramparts around you and surround you and hem you in on every side. They will crush you to the ground, you and your children within you, and they will not leave within you one stone upon another, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation from God." Okay, basic question. Who is Jesus talking to? He comes into the city and says, "You."
You know, Amy, that's so interesting. The reason I'm laughing is because I had not actually paid attention to that, because I connect it back very strongly in my own mind to the end of chapter 13 that we read a couple of weeks ago, where Jesus weeps over Jerusalem, and he uses the name there, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. And so I have read this the same way as he's coming into the city and he's saying, "Oh, Jerusalem." And in that sense, he's talking to the city, he's talking to the temple, he's talking to the government, he's talking to the people. And so all of that sort of caught up together, represented by the city of Jerusalem. How would you read that "you" there?
I read it the same way. You know, there are plenty of places in the Hebrew Bible where Jerusalem is sort of depicted as a person, as a, Lady Zion. And so I pretty naturally read it that way. And I actually just looked back. I was like, is it possible to even read this as in response to the Pharisees? I don't know that I want to do that.
It's interesting because, the Pharisees are saying, hey, like, you got to be quiet or there's going to be a violent suppression here.
Yeah.
And then what Jesus is saying is, you don't understand what leads to peace.
Yeah.
And so if you do sort of read it with the Pharisees, or if you read it as the leaders of the temple, the positive way of reading the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem at this time, and it's not one that I probably say often enough, but they are in a really tough spot where their job is to protect the Jewish people. And also, like, they're the buffer between the Jewish people and the Roman Empire, who has all the power. And so, one way of reading this is that the leaders of Jerusalem, like the Pharisees in the previous little bit of the passage, that what they're doing is saying the way to peace is to appease Rome. Like, let's just not stir the waters.
Yeah.
And Jesus seems to be saying, look, that's not going to get you where you think it's going to get you, because your enemy's coming for you. I don't know how far I want to push that, but it is interesting that this is about not being able to know peace, when what the Pharisees have been doing is saying, like, be quiet, because you're gonna cause us trouble. Well, does that go anywhere for you?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would make a case that he actually is talking to the Pharisees in this.
Oh no, I don't mean to make that case either.
Yeah. But the juxtaposition of those two things, I think, really is a question then, and certainly is a question now. Like, what do we mean by peace? What does peace really look like? And especially when the powers that be are powers that oppress some populations and keep things orderly.
Yes.
And especially if you are not part of an oppressed population, that seems that sort of starts to be what peace looks like to us. And in order to get to this other kind of peace that's being put on the table here, you have to go through a whole lot of tumult, and groups that were not suffering before will suffer now.
Yes.
And all of those things that we've been talking about all along. But I think the juxtaposition of the desire for peace with the desire for peace
Yes.
is really important here.
That's really helpful, Amy. Because, I think this, like, building up the enemies building fortifications around you, encircling you, like, that's a reference to the Jewish revolt and the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 66 to 70, I would think. And so then you get the, like, trying to pacify the people when there is injustice. It might work today, but it's going to eventually erupt, right? There is lack of justice is not peace. And so this is a short-term solution, like, hey, everybody, let's be quiet. And eventually, one way or the other, it's going to play out.
Yeah.
You made a comment about doing the things necessary for peace. And I confess that when Jesus says, if only you knew all the things that lead to peace, I think I might be one of the ones that doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
What do you what do you think he's talking about?
I mean, it's hidden from my eyes, Bobby.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because we've had all these stories recently about people unable to see in various ways, like they can't see over the crowd, or they don't have eyesight, or people do have sight that you don't expect to.
Yes.
And then here we have you don't know what leads to peace. And I'm like, you are correct, sir. I do not know.
Yeah. Bobby, when you were just talking about the downfall of Jerusalem in 70, I mean, I 100% agree with you about that, lack of justice, it cannot be peace. And also, I don't think it was lack of justice that caused the downfall of I think there was a whole different thing that caused the downfall of Jerusalem in 70. So, like, that, I don't think.
How would you describe that whole different thing?
You're getting into some gaps in my historical knowledge here, but I mean, that was really a matter of sort of the power of the Roman Empire overpowering the power of the Jewish population that was there, right? That wasn't like
all it really meant. Yeah, there
justice.
there was a revolt in 66 from the Jewish side, and then the Romans brutally suppressed it. And so all I meant by that was the reason that there is a revolt is because the people living under the thumb of Rome can't take it anymore. And so
I see.
If you say be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet long enough, eventually it's going to erupt. And that's, at least in my sort of reading of history, that's the way the rebellion happens, and that's why Rome ends up destroying Jerusalem. You can only tell the people to be silent so often.
Bobby, there was a moment that I was reading this description of Jerusalem that your enemies will, surround you on all sides and hem you up from every side. And it is clear in my mind it is talking about Jerusalem, but I wondered if readers would connect this at all to the suffering of Jesus.
Yes.
I don't think that is what is being explicitly talked about here, but I wonder am I just connecting it because, like, suffering is suffering?
No, I really love that, Amy. I had not seen that myself, but when you say it to me, I really think that has rich possibilities, because what Jesus is saying is being obedient or being, like, quietistic in the face of Roman imperial power is not going to lead you where you think it's going to. It's going to result in violence. And then here you have Jesus, who in Luke's telling, his main characteristic is that he's innocent. He's done nothing. And he's going to get, exactly as you say, encircled and mocked and beaten and killed. And so he's sort of playing that out. Like, this is what's going to happen to you when you play by imperial logic. The ruling regime has to change. And as long as the empire is in charge, this is what they're going to do to you. And then, as you're saying, this is what they're about to do to me. And so it's about who is king, and this king of peace and God's kingdom and the rule of the Lord on the one hand versus the rule of Rome on the other. And there's a moment of possibility here when the kingdom of heaven comes near, your gracious visit from God. And if people can make that shift, the bit I struggle, I really love that. The bit I struggle with a lot about peace is like, one would not describe the end of Jesus's life as peaceful.
No.
And so he's given his life over to this other kingdom, and it results in his execution. So it just like, I want to read this passage as like, you've got a choice between violence and peace.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems a little more like, if you commit yourself to peace, it's going to result in violence.
I mean, it seems to me like it's if you commit yourself to peace or you don't commit yourself to peace. I feel like what it's saying is you can't avoid the violence of the Roman regime or of any empire by trying to hide from it and letting things slide and like just you can't. It's not, and that sort of, I think, is the idea that Jerusalem is trying to avoid it by just doing that and suppressing its own sense of justice. Jesus does not suppress his sense of justice and also suffers a very violent fate. But I feel like the kind of peace that he is offering, as you have often said, it's not that it's going to be it's not easeful on your body necessarily right now. I feel like the message I'm taking from this are like, there's not a way to avoid that pain. So do the right thing.
Yes.
And in the long run, it will pay off in different kinds of ways. But
I think that makes a lot of sense to me, Amy, that the empire is the empire and it is violent and it's going to be violent. You might be able to get it to be peaceful for a moment, but at its core, violence is what it resorts to. Mm-hmm. But you can live in a world of peace. You can be a person of peace here and now, which is what Jesus has done. And that doesn't have any guarantees about what the empire is going to do or not do.
Right.
But it does about who you're going to be.
Right.
And then there's some sort of long-term eschatological view, maybe, although Luke is less strong about it than some other gospels, but in which that peace is all that there is.
Yeah.
But that involves the demise of the empire in the meantime, or at least the empire ceasing to function according to imperial logic.
Yeah, it's reminding me of that text we read a couple weeks ago where the Pilate kills some people and then a building falls on some other people or something like that. And we were talking about how our conversation sort of landed in this place of like, bad things happen. Some of them are accidents. Some of them are cruelty. And we're not promising you that you can avoid any of those things.
Yeah.
But like what you can do is live right in the time that you have. Yes. And that is a way to sort of be in the kingdom now. And also maybe, be right with God in your mind so that at the moment of your death, you just happen to be right with God. Mm-hmm. Oh, it feels super weird and powerful to kind of put the fate of Jerusalem and Jesus in parallel for a moment here and see what happens when we do that. Well, Bobby, it's Palm Sunday. You have no palms.
No palms.
But you do have quite a lot in this text. What is feeling salient to you?
My reading of this text has utterly changed in the last 4 minutes. In a really, I think, profound way for me, but I don't know that I can put words to it just yet. But here's what I've got. Is this Palm Sunday without the palms is very clear that it is putting forward Jesus as a king who is bringing peace, who is an alternative to the king of Rome, to the emperor, to Pilate. And these are options that you have. Who are you going to proclaim as the king? Are you going to follow this processional declaring Jesus as the king, or are you going to try to quiet that down and be quietistic in the face of the empire. It's not even necessarily declaring that the emperor is the king. It's just like, just like be quiet. Like just keep it to yourself. The thing that I keep coming back to is this lack of palms. And I've been wrestling with it until just now. Where I have landed is, yes, Jesus is king, but Jesus is not a king like the Maccabees. That is, the goal is not to establish some other kind of governmental structure that defeats the power of the government that you don't like, that's currently in charge, that then becomes its own governmental structure that exercises violence in a different way, which is what human structures always seem to do. The point is, there is a different whole, on another cosmic plane, as you have been pushing us towards, there is a whole other way of organizing life, and it is under the reign of God in these ways that we talk about all the time, about love of God, justice for the neighbor, love of enemy, and being a person of peace, not exercising the violence of the state, either the state that is currently occupying you or the one you wish you could establish. And so this is about living out the gospel of peace in the midst of the empire and not being quiet about it. And for Jesus, that results in, like, the empire does not like people loudly being peaceful. And so there may be some repercussions for that, but it's in the service of a bigger picture about the transformation of the world. And so I've become a fan of Palm Sunday without the palms, and that, you know, the putting of the cloaks on the road now has a whole other significance about like putting some skin in the game, or like putting something of yourself into this declaration of Jesus. I haven't got it all put together yet, but that's the sort of road that I'm headed down.
It is such a like wild and mind-blowing thing to try to imagine an existence on Earth that was not ruled in the ways that humans always tend to rule ourselves, which exactly as you're saying, like, yeah, you have a government, this one's better than that one, and this leader's better than that one. Yeah, for sure. Like,
yes.
But to completely say, I throw all of that out.
Yes.
What would that actually look like? I kind of love that last image that you left us with the cloaks, each individual cloak being placed one in front of the next one.
Yes.
Because I feel like in that kind of system, you know, like we always want to elect the magical leader that's going to save us from ourselves. And I still want to. Yes. And also I, on some very abstract level, recognize that like maybe that's not actually how this is going to work, that it's going to be we each have only our own life and our own cloak to move things in the direction that we want them to be. And there's no guarantee that there's no leader that's going to keep us safe and comfortable and whatever. Like there's that we have to put all of that sort of in the back seat.
Yes.
That's a rough platform to run for office on, but
it is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to add a second thought beyond that. I just want to sit with the thought of the individual cloaks, I think. Maybe someone can build a ritual on that. Come on, Terry, if anyone can do it.
It's Terry. No, I love that image of the cloak. Like what it was making me think of is like, my cloak is whatever it is, like 6 feet long, and it can get the cult 6 feet further.
Right.
But then that's the end of my cloak. And so now it's your cloak, and now it's the cloak after, like, that's a beautiful image.
Bobby, we have a couple special episodes coming up. We have a Maundy Thursday. We'll read Luke 22, 1 to 27.
Yes.
And there's Good Friday and Crucifixion. We'll read Luke 23, 32 to 47. And then for our next Sunday episode, sort of regular episode, is Easter Sunday.
Whoa.
Which is Luke 24, 1 to 12.
Yes.
I know. Quick pace.
Yes, we're moving through Holy Week. As you well know, for the first 4 years of Bible Worm, I think, we did the Good Friday episode. And then a couple of years ago, somebody said, we know what you think about Good Friday. What do you think about Maundy Thursday? And so the way that we'll do that is what we've done the last couple of years is we'll record a new Maundy Thursday episode for Luke's version of that story. And then we will post the Good Friday episode from 4 years ago when we talked about Luke's version of the Good Friday text. I have no idea what we said 4 years ago, but I'm sure.
Sure, it was very relevant to this moment.
I imagine.
All right, well, that sounds great. So then our next conversation will be Luke 22, verses 1 to 27. And I look forward to it.
Me too, Amy. I'll see you then.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again for our special episode on the Last Supper, Luke chapter 22, verses 1 through 27. Until then, keep on digging.